Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something you probably think you already know all about, the 12 steps. But stick with me, because we're going to see how this powerful framework is so much more than its reputation, and how it's really a universal guide for personal change that pretty much anyone can use.
So, when you hear 12 steps, what's the first image that pops into your head? For most of us, it's addiction recovery, right? And yeah, that's where it all started, but that's just a tiny piece of the story. The real question is, could this framework actually be for you, right here, right now?
You see, the big idea we're digging into is that the 12 steps are basically an adaptable, universal blueprint for personal growth. It's a practical guide for anyone who's looking for some healing, a deeper sense of purpose, or, just a better way to handle all the curveballs life throws at us. Okay, so to get our heads around this, we're going to break the whole journey down into 4 parts. First, we'll cover the starting line, steps 1 through 3. Then, we'll cross what we're calling the bridge to change with steps 4 to 7. After that, it's all about making peace with the past in steps 8 and 9. And finally, we'll look at how to build a whole new design for living with the last 3 steps.
So let's dive right in. Our first section, starting the journey. Think of these first 3 steps as the call to adventure. That's the moment you finally look around and say, you know what, the old way just isn't working for me anymore.
This first phase, it's all about these 3 foundational moves. It kicks off with admitting there's a problem you just can't solve on your own. Then, it's about believing that a solution actually exists somewhere outside of yourself. And finally, the big one, deciding you're actually going to accept that help.
Step 1 is that huge turning point. It's a moment of just radical honesty. You admit you're stuck, that some problem is bigger than you are. And listen, this isn't about weakness at all. It's actually about courage. The courage to recognize that your old way of life isn't working and that something better is out there.
Okay, so once you've admitted the problem, step 2 is all about looking for a solution. It's this simple, really humble recognition that you need help from a power that's, greater or more effective than yourself. And what's so important to get here is that this higher power does not have to be a guy in the sky. It could be a support group, a therapist, even a set of principles like honesty or compassion. It just has to be a resource more powerful than whatever you've been trying on your own. Now, step 3 is where things get really interesting. The word surrender can sound kind of scary, right? But this isn't about giving up or losing your free will. Not at all. A better way to think about it is as a voluntary partnership. You're choosing to align with that outside help, to cooperate with it, to rely on it. It's a decision to let your ego take a bit of a backseat, and honestly, that's an incredibly powerful choice to make.
All right, let's move on to our next section and see where this takes us. We're now at what's called the bridge to change. These middle steps, 4 through 7, this is really the heart of the entire process. This is where the deep internal work really happens.
So, this central challenge involves 4 key things. Taking a fearless look at yourself, admitting what you find to someone else, becoming truly ready to let go of old patterns, and then, and this is key, just allowing that change to happen. Step 4 is just brilliant. It's about taking that ancient piece of wisdom, know thyself, and actually putting it into practice. You take a clear, honest look at your beliefs, your desires, your past actions. Then, step 5 is about sharing all of that with another person. Why? Because when you confess something out loud, you accept it. You make it real. Now let's be honest. This kind of deep self-examination is not easy. There's a real risk of getting tangled up in guilt or regret over what might have been. But the reward is just profound. We're talking about a freedom like you have never known. It's a heroic thing to do, which is exactly why having a guide or a mentor through this part of the process is so important. And this brings us to a huge realization in step 6. You can have all the self-awareness in the world, but insight alone isn't enough to change those really deep-seated habits. A lot of those behaviors, they served a purpose at some point. This step is about making a conscious, deliberate choice to give up the things that are now holding you back. So then we get to this really fascinating paradox in step 7. After all that hard work of deciding to change, the change itself doesn't actually come from just gritting your teeth and forcing it with willpower. No, it's a completely different kind of process. And here it is. True transformation is described as a natural process of growth from within, kind of like a flower unfolding. It's not some violent act you force on yourself. It's about creating the right conditions for change and then allowing it to happen organically. It takes effort for sure, but it's the effort of engagement, not a force.
All right, so once that internal shift starts to happen, the journey turns outward. And this brings us to our third phase, making peace with the past. Steps 8 and 9 are all about atonement, about taking real action to, as they say, clean up your side of the street.
The process here is pretty straightforward, even if it's not always easy. First, you make a list of everyone you've harmed, based on that inventory you did earlier, and second, you set out to make direct amends to those people, wherever and whenever it's possible.
Look, this is not an exercise in feeling guilty. It's an opportunity to finally put down all that heavy, dark baggage you've been carrying around. The whole point is to find true peace. But there's one critical rule here. You do not make an amends if doing so would cause more harm to someone else. That is the single most important guideline, and it's what makes this a process of healing for everyone involved, not just for you.
Okay, let's move into our final section and see how this all comes together. We're calling this a new design for living. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are all about weaving everything you've learned into a daily practice that you can actually sustain. This is you returning to life, but with a brand new toolkit.
This new design for living is built on 3 pillars: continuing the process of self-inventory and quickly correcting mistakes, deepening your connection to whatever it is you define as your higher power, and finally, contributing to the world by helping others.
The key thing to get here is that this is not a finish line. These last steps create a framework for continuous growth. Step 10 keeps you on track, Step 11 nurtures your spiritual side, and Step 12, well, it brings purpose. And there's a profound truth here. By helping other people, we end up helping ourselves in the most meaningful way possible.
And that really brings us to the core philosophy of this entire thing. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? The goal isn't to climb some ladder to become flawless or perfect. The goal is to just engage in the lifelong, messy, beautiful process of becoming.
So I guess the big takeaway from all this is that the 12 steps aren't a static checklist that you just tick off once and you're done. No, they're a dynamic, living pathway. The source material compares them to wellness paths you might find in a park that give you direction for your journey, but you're the one who has to get out there and walk it, day by day.
And that brings us to the final question, which is really a question for you. When you look at this universal blueprint for admitting a problem, seeking help, cleaning up the past, and living in a whole new way, what journey could these steps unlock for you?